taking certain actions regarding admission, applicants, and faculty concerning diversity, equity, inclusion, or patriotism, exceptions, and providing for civil remedies and penalties. So we heard this bill on January 24th, I believe, and there's a copy of that bill text for you on your desk, as well as the fiscal note from the Division of Budget. But basically, since it's been a little bit of time since we heard testimony from proponents and opponents and neutral, wanted an opportunity for us as a committee to look at the bill, express any concerns you may have with the bill, and to see if there's any areas in which we can move forward together as a committee. So I do know Representative Rajas, I don't believe is going to be able to make it. He had a conflict. He may drop in a little bit later, but I don't anticipate this being a hour and a half meeting per se. But one of the concerns expressed in this committee when we had the hearing amongst members was the amount in section 1, subsection I, and there's a penalty in there against each educational institution that would be in violation of this act. And so there was some concern about that dollar amount being too high. But with that being said, I'll let the committee, if you have specific concerns about the bill, what it does. We do have our reviser of statutes here as well to provide some feedback as well. Representative, and just to make clear that it's my intention that we will work this bill tomorrow. So that's why we're in the discussion today to see, potentially what amendments that we would need to bring to hopefully get as much consensus on items as we can. So Representative Fairchild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You just answered my question. I was just going to ask if we were actually going to work the bill today.
Not today. I just got done reporting out the remainder of the university budgets this morning, so I thought it might be too much to try to do in one day on my plate. So I thought to do that tomorrow. Vice Chair Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The concern that I have in reading the report that was presented to us and in looking at the bill, there's no definition section. So how exactly are we defining diversity, inclusion, and equity?
That's a great question. I know that's something the audit pointed out, is that there's not a consistent definition and use of those terms, although I think they seek to broadly achieve the same goals or whatnot. But that was definitely a issue that stood out to me amongst the DEI audit, was that there wasn't a common framework or definition of what these actually fairly common terms are.
And in fact, it said there were 6 different definitions because there were 6 different universities and they all had a different definition. I mean, some of them had some overlapping items, but there wasn't one overall definition of what exactly we're talking about. And that concerns me.
Thank you, Vice Chair Sanders. Other concerns with the bill? Yes, Representative Woodard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this has been an ongoing conversation since, I guess this was introduced last year, and we kind of had some of the discussion with the proviso last year. I would say the biggest things for me are the level, and you've covered some of this, but the amount of the penalty, also litigation. I think that we already are at a place where setting up any of the universities for litigation is costly for both parties. So I'd be interested in anything we could do to maybe minimize or have some sort of remedy that if there was an action brought against a university, that we could at least give them a chance to remedy that without a $100,000 fine or potential legal costs. If it was brought to their attention, maybe they didn't know, or maybe their HR departments are using boilerplate language that they've used in the past, giving them a chance to remedy that versus opening up to litigation would be something that I would be open to for amending. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Woodard. Appreciate that feedback. I had a question for the reviser. So the actual date that this would take effect in its current language would be after its publication in the statute book. So that's July 1 for the new fiscal year 25. Okay. So I guess hypothetically speaking, if we did pass this out of committee and say it passed the House and there was general agreement with the Senate on pushing this forward, do you think that would give enough time for the universities to, I guess, go through their websites and get this taken care of? Or do you think they would need more time? Is that something that is a concern of the committee? Representative Amix.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question then. You're talking as of this date from where we are in the session. Are they going to need more time?
Sure. That might be something I'd have to ask the universities. And from what I understand, it seems like I've gone on some of the websites of the universities, and it does appear that there's less of these requirements. I haven't heard whether or not, the universities have changed policy or whatnot, but there seems to be less of these on their job postings. However, there are still some out there. And so I guess absent any knowledge of what the universities are doing, at least they haven't acknowledged publicly what course they're taking on this. I continue to, work this bill and whatnot, but just wanted to see, we're probably going to be out of here of the adjourning by the end of April, I would imagine at the latest. I mean, that's when we adjourned last year. And so I didn't know if that would be enough time for the universities. It was just a general comment. And I didn't know if you guys had heard from the universities about any of those concerns or not. I have not, but. Representative Woodard.
Mr. Chair, I would certainly support keeping it with the statute book rather than, I know a number of committees are continuing to change things on publication of the register, which would be much more quickly. So I think if we are going to move forward, giving some sort of runway for them to make these changes is probably for the better.
Thank you, Representative. I would agree with that as well. Vice Chair Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you know if there is any other definition in statute in the state of Kansas regarding anything relative to diversity, inclusion, and equity? Does a definition exist in Kansas statute?
Thank you, Vice Chair Sanders. I am not aware of any statutory definition of those items. I would defer to the reviser, but I would think that since I introduced this last March, I would have been probably made aware of it, or it might have come up in discussion through the audit process, but I'm not aware of anything. Representative Fairchild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As far as the date of the bill when it would be enacted, I mean, I'm not sure that it matters because, I mean, realistically, I don't necessarily think that we would have the votes to override a veto. However, I don't think that's a reason to not bring it up on the floor of the House or the Senate, and because I think it's an issue that deserves to be discussed and to be debated and then put everybody on record as far as how they would vote. But I mean, we had a debate on that and a vote on that on a line item veto last year, and we weren't able to override the veto last year. So I just view it more as something that I would support bringing it out of committee and then having a debate and a vote on the floor. But I don't personally think that we would be able to have the votes to override a veto on this.
Thank you, Representative. It's been said before that politics is the art of the impossible. So I will be a little idealistic in our pursuits here in the legislature. There was some concern brought to my attention about the language. It says in section 1, subsection A, it talks about a pledge or statement regarding diversity, equity, inclusion, patriotism, or related topics. So there's been that brought to my attention, or related topics. Well, what does that mean? It's fairly broad and open-ended. So wanted to throw that out there for discussion. If anybody would be opposed to eliminating that confusion. Representative Smith.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I think it'd be good to eliminate that last term because that's, like you say, it's too broad. That wouldn't help anything. Thank you.
Okay. Appreciate the feedback, Vice Chair Sanders.
I would concur with Coach. There isn't a definition in the first place, and then you're going to muddy the water further by saying in related topics. No, that needs to go. I agree.
There's also been some discussion come my way that some people think that we should remove the word patriotism because that's not anything the universities are requiring in terms of a ideological statement that would have to be produced as a condition of employment. I think it was put in there with the idea of demonstrating that any and all statements, compelled statements for a condition of employment should be rejected outright, you know, if they're related to something more ideological based and not relevant to someone's career field. So that's, I think, why it was put in there, just to kind of make a point. So, Representative Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To me, the word patriotism should stay. Whether it's enforced or not, it doesn't hurt anything. I mean, we're in a great country. We give these universities money to keep themselves open from the taxpayers. So I would keep the term myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. I've also been had conversations that maybe we should add some words in there as well. So I would throw that out there, see what the committee thinks. For example, the University of Kansas has their unit is diversity, equity, and belonging. I think they use the term belonging a little bit more than some other institutions. Some use inclusion kind of interchangeably. So whether or not we want to add that, as well as some universities, there's been documentation that they've required a statement that would include views on social justice. And so that's kind of a catch-all phrase that's been out there as well. So didn't know if anybody had feedback on those two words, if those were to be added. Any general thoughts on that? Representative Smith.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I think social justice is important, but I think it's pretty vague. And what was the other word?
The word that's kind
Belonging.
of belonging, just it's with, yeah.
Again, I think everybody needs to have a place at the table, but you can't force that. I would not go along with either one of those things. So, thank you.
Representative Fairchild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would it be possible just to change the wording altogether and to just make it say that no one would be required to make a statement in regards to a political ideology in order to, as a condition of admission or educational aid, instead of having this specific wording to say that no one is required to make any ideological statements.
I mean, that is something that we'd probably have to define as well. I mean, what would be a political, I don't know. How would you measure that? I do know the bill it's basically a non-discrimination bill if you look at it. It says that you can't basically mandate or require that someone produce a statement as a condition for gaining employment or promotion at a university, but if they did, you couldn't count that against them as well. So it goes both ways. I don't know. Having been in the job market myself, I'm not usually producing more documentation than is required because I don't know if that would be in one's self-interest to share with a interview committee their worldviews on X, Y, and Z if it didn't have anything to do with the particular job. So I do also want to ensure the committee that, when you do personal interviews, there's a list of questions you cannot ask. Those would be in violation of federal law. But there's other ways of gaining information about someone's character or background or their experience working with a diversity of people. And so there's still leeway for universities to try to make informed decisions. And I just wanted to make a comment on that, Representative Smith.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I agree with the chair. I really believe the fewer words you use, the better off you are. I think the more words you use, the more confusion, and there's always something else you can add. So I think the fewer, the better. So I agree with you on that point.
Okay, are there any other are there other sections of the bill that people have concerns with? Representative Woodard.
Mr. Chair, I don't want to relitigate the hearing, but I'm still going to, I'm definitely open to us amending this, but I think at the end of the day, I still will be opposing the bill. This doesn't apply to our private institutions. Pulling up, I don't want to single out any institution, but the first one that comes up on Google is Kansas Wesleyan, and they are proud about their diversity, equity, and inclusion. This doesn't apply to our private institutions. I do appreciate the carve out that says that if someone's working in, say, a diversity, equity, and inclusion role or a vice provost role or whatever, or pick your institution, that if they're focused on those sorts of populations, that they're still able to ask about their experience in those areas. But I do want to make it incredibly clear to this body that once again, we still need to modernize the Kansas Act Against Discrimination. It does protect people based on race. It does protect people based on religion or different underrepresented backgrounds, but still, it is still legal in the state of Kansas to deny housing and refuse business to members of the LGBTQ plus community. And so while this does carve out some populations, it still does not protect the rights of all Kansans. And until we modernize the Kansas Act Against Discrimination, I'm going to oppose any bill that leaves out LGBTQ plus Kansans. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Go to Representative Fairchild next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had a debate earlier about whether we should give taxpayer money directly to private schools. And, I took the position that we shouldn't do that because that probably would just lead to more regulations and more red tape on private colleges and everything. And so, I would just say that I agree with the bill not applying to private colleges because we're not at this point directly funding private colleges. I mean, there is some need-based aid that goes to students that go to private colleges, but we're not directly funding the private colleges. And so I think the private colleges, need to stay private. And so I agree with this bill only applying to the public universities and not to the private colleges.
Thank you, Representative. And I appreciate Representative Woodard mentioning Kansas Wesleyan University. They are in our district, I should say, Representative Vice Chair Sanders and I's district. And I had a good sit-down conversation with the administration there just about a week ago to discuss diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I was quite surprised how much they are doing at their university. But I will note that there are key distinctions in federal law and court precedent that there's that distinguish between the public and privates and what is allowable. Many of the private institutions are faith-based, and they do have uh, a different latitude, if you will, when it comes to what they can and can't do. Representative Amix.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I appreciate the comments by the colleagues that are here today. I tell you what, I have a hard time with this bill just because I'm not sure that there's really a problem. And, you know, I sit here and look at, we're considering fining the universities, the same universities that we fund. It's kind of like taking money out of one pocket, put in the other pocket, but you know, it's one of those things that I have a real hard time with that. You know, we can sit here and we can change all the words we want. We were to take it to the floor, I bet we could get 125 opinions on what the wording ought to be, you know, in section 1. So I think as colleague from Pittsburgh said, you know, probably if we're going to proceed with the bill, the least amount of language is probably the best route to go, especially as I read some of the comments by the Attorney General's office and the defense that we're going to have to put up, probably in court and appeals throughout the process. So I think that we need to be very, very careful of that. You know, I cannot imagine, like I say, finding our universities. That makes no sense to me. I mean, it really doesn't. But it's going to be the will of whatever this body wants to do. But that's kind of where I'm at on this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have to tell you that the only power the legislature has over anything is with money. And it is our responsibility to take care of the budget and manage the taxpayer money properly. So fining someone for not doing something in statute is not inappropriate. We have another bill coming that does the very same thing, because we can pass statute after statute after statute, and if it doesn't have any teeth in it, it's not going to get done. So I totally disagree with saying we shouldn't take money, because it's just taking taxpayer money from one place to another. It is a method of enforcement, and it's probably about the only method we have other than a felony or misdemeanor. So I don't think that's a problem with me whatsoever. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative. Go to Vice Chair Sanders next.
I certainly appreciate that comment and tend to agree with it. But on the other hand, I also tend to agree that $100,000 might be a bit excessive. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Vice Chair. And so, you know, one of the reasons I brought this bill up last year, you know, we did offer a budget proviso, which got in the budget. Governor Lyon item vetoed it. We tried to override. We're short on votes and whatnot. And I think the point was made that there's a strong majority, not a super majority, but a strong majority of legislators that agreed that these DEI statements can too easily function as ideological litmus tests that threaten employment or advancement for faculty that may hold dissenting views. And when you require these statements or adherence to diversity, equity, and inclusion, basically on the back end, the university has a hiring committee. They have a rubric, and depending on how strongly you answer that question, they give you certain points and you get graded on your answers. And so I don't believe that we should be discriminatory. For example, I've cited numerous positions that some of our universities had posted and had those requirements that their field of study has nothing to do specifically with diversity, equity, and inclusion. It has to do with physics or precision agriculture or uh, aerospace engineering. That's where those people learn their expertise. That's their field of expertise. Now, do you want well-rounded people that can articulate and communicate with a wide audience of people? Well, sure. In universities, their bottom line is all about being a welcoming campus for people. Otherwise, it's going to impact their budget and their tuition dollars that come in. So it's in their own self-interest to do these things. And I don't think these DEI statements are necessary in order for a university to be successful and to attract successful faculty or people respected in their field of study. As it relates to the fine issue or the penalty in subsection I of section 1, it does say there, upon receipt of each, so this is line 25 or 24, upon receipt of each certification, the Director of Accounts and report shall transfer from the State General Fund account or Special Revenue Fund of the violating post-secondary educational institution to the State General Fund account or Special Revenue Fund of a post-secondary educational institution that is not currently in violation of this section and has not violated this section during the preceding 2 years as determined by the state treasurer. The issue I probably have with that is go down to subsection J. It talks about what post-secondary educational institution means. And so that's including all the regents, Washburn, the community colleges and technical colleges. So it doesn't specifically say that those funds would have to be appropriated equally amongst those non-violating institutions. And so I think that that's a little bit of a gap that we have to reconcile if we're going to keep that in the bill, because I'm not sure we want the state treasurer dictating where that money would go, or singling it out to one institution over the other. So. Are there any other items or sections of the bill you have questions on or concerns about? I'm a little tempted here to get something off my chest, if the committee would indulge me. So when we talk about things like diversity, equity, and inclusion, it can conjure up a lot of feelings and emotions. And I think one of the worst things to happen to anybody is just to be misunderstood. And so there was an article in the Kansas Reflector recently. It was an opinion piece, but it basically starts off, just in time for Black History Month, Representative Howe introduces HB 2460. And I take issue with that characterization, because not only is it patently false, it gets into innuendo that I have a bias against people that are different from me. And so I just had to get off my chest. That's not true. The bill was introduced in March of 2023, has nothing to do with Black History Month or any other minority. So I just had to state that for the record. And I think words matter, and we have to be aware of how those words impact each other. And the same thing happened with the Wichita Eagle last year. They did an opinion piece that suggested I was blowing the racist dog whistle just for merely asking questions about how much universities were spending on DEI. My intention was only to gather information, but it kind of shows the extremes that we have in our country right now, where people will go from one extreme to the other. And I think that's where a lot of damage is done. I think the majority of people in our country are well intentioned. They have good hearts. They want to be welcoming. They want to respect one another, especially based on the merits and the content of their character. So I'll leave it at that. But I appreciate the indulgence of the committee in hearing some opining from the chairman. Thank you. Representative Smith.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Going along with what you just said, being a coach, I was told you never argue with people that buy ink by the barrel. Thank you.
Representative, you're supposed to tell me that before I just made that comment. Thank you. Well, it looks like there are some areas that we can work on as a committee. If you have particular ideas that you want to see with the bill, and please come and talk to me. You don't have to, but I would certainly welcome an opportunity to visit with you to see maybe what your concerns are and see if we can work together on producing a bill that maybe is improved a little bit from its current form. Representative Fairchild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since it seemed like we got done with the discussion pretty early, would it be possible to begin working the bill even if there's additional amendments for it tomorrow? I did have an amendment for it that I already had printed out and that I was going to have given to the committee. I mean, it's up to you if you want to just wait till tomorrow, but I mean, we would be getting out pretty early if we just stop everything now.
Yeah, thank you. I do have some ideas as well. I don't have all of those ready yet, and so I think I'll keep with the schedule for tomorrow, just to give everybody an opportunity to come back tomorrow. You know, hopefully get some good rest and come back and try to take care of that. But work that bill HB 2460. But we also need to rework HB 2705, which is a bill that's already passed out of this committee. It wasn't able to get to before turnaround, so it was blessed and sent back to our committee. And this is the bill with K-State University. They have some property off campus. They want to be able to sell that and use the proceeds to help fund on-campus housing. And so we just need to consider that tomorrow. Does anybody have any questions for me about budget report outs? I've had that the last 2 days. So if you guys have any questions for me, I'm glad to talk about it now, or we can talk about it offline. Okay. All right. With that, Representative Smith.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. This is a little bit off the topic. I just wanted to thank the whole committee. I think we got a good variety, a good diverse group in here. And I appreciate the way everything goes around. I just want to thank everybody for working together like they do. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Smith. I share the sentiment. A lot of great people around this. I guess it's a desk or a rostrum or something, but we have a lot of great people in front of us that help support us all session with our revisor, KLRD, our technical staff, our committee assistant. And so it's really an honor to work with each of you. So it does appear that we have a lot of work ahead of us in terms of higher education in the state of Kansas and House of Appropriations. There's been a larger discussion about the viability of our state institutions of higher education. And I'm not sure we can accomplish all of that in this committee room with the limited time that we have during session. So I'm looking at some opportunities to maybe do an interim committee to where we can really dig down into some of the issues regarding tuition, enrollment challenges, the enrollment cliff, scholarships that we do offer, um, a whole host of things that really need to have a larger discussion and deserve that. So if you have ideas for how we can get there or what that legislative format would look like, I would welcome your ideas. Okay. With that being said, meeting is adjourned until tomorrow.